Torah Resource is made possible through the generous donations of people like you. If you would like to help us continue to produce this kind of material, please consider making a donation at TorahResource.com.
All right, we're back for another parashah, another Bible study. This time we get to finish our story of Joseph. And his brothers finally figure out what's going on. And before I forget, I'm going to pull this up here. If you are not already subscribed to Torah Resource, the Torah Resource YouTube page, please consider subscribing. I know it sounds weird, but it actually does help us. That's one of the better ways to help us. If you're just finding us on YouTube, you can support our work by subscribing and then liking this video. Okay, let's jump in here. And today I'm going to give you all of our Bible passages that we're looking at. The passage that we're looking at in the one-year Torah portion is called, "And he approached," Genesis 44:18 through 47:27. We have associating passages in the Haftorah, which is Ezekiel 37:15 through 28. And then in the Apostolic Scriptures, the New Testament, which Rob is taking this week, is Luke 24:13 through 27. There are a couple of interesting things in this passage that I noted, but once again, we're in narrative. So it's not, to me, and this is just me, but to me, the narrative is a lot easier to read in terms of it is what it says, right? There's not, I mean, we can obviously get stuff out of the text, but it's not like there's theological underpinnings that, have to be seen certain ways. So anyway, I'm going to throw this over to Rob. Rob, go for it.
Yeah, this is a great Torah portion. Like Caleb just said, it opens up with Vayigash. That's the name of the Torah portion, and it's Vayigash elav Yehuda, which means and Judah approached him, and that is it's easy to read it too quickly, but what we're realizing here, if you've been attentive to what's going on, there's a lot at stake. Judah has pledged his life to his father to protect Benjamin.
Right.
Even framed when he spoke with his father, he said, I will, if I do not bring Benjamin back, I'm paraphrasing, I will have sinned against you forever. I mean, the wording there is, I will have sinned against you. So Judah has framed he's framed how serious he takes this responsibility in terms of sin.
And this is important. And this is important because because within our story it shows Joseph that the selling of Joseph by his brothers, they have recognized the magnitude of what they did, and now they're willing to go into servitude and to die for their other brother. Because they've learned the lesson, right? And I think this is why Joseph becomes overwhelmed, right? He has to make everybody leave. And it says that everyone, Pharaoh's house heard him weep, right? So keep going, sorry.
Yeah, you're right. All these things are coming. It's like the fireworks start. Bam, 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 bam. All these things are coming together. And in the basic story on the surface of it is Joseph. We know that Joseph's really Joseph. We know that he has running this masquerade for the sake of, now here's the thing. Joseph's not pretending to be a ruler in Egypt. He actually is. But what he's doing is he's really pouring it on, and he's hiding, he's concealing his that he's Joseph, and he's pouring on the facts of his high status and as a ruler in Egypt, and that authority is, he's really putting a thumb on them. But it's not malicious. It is, he wants to test their hearts. Have they changed?
Right.
And so I believe that's the core rationality, as if any careful reader is, if you were to say, well, what's Joseph's motive here? It's he wants, when he called, we talked about this the other day, when he says, you guys are spies, the attentive reader knows that he doesn't mean it. Joseph doesn't really think they're spies. That's his ruse, right? He's pouring this on. He wants to put the pressure on the brothers because he wants to test their hearts. And this is a bigger theological point, because we see, if we just look at a parallel, look at Deuteronomy 8, where Moses is saying, the Lord brought you into the wilderness, he fed you, with manna for these 40 years to test, to know what was in your heart.
Yeah.
And the question is, well, did God already know what was in the hearts of the people of Israel? Or is the testing for it to be revealed to each other what's in our heart? My view is that God knows the heart. God doesn't need to test us to see what's in the heart. The testing is to reveal what is hidden. We cannot see each other's hearts. Joseph cannot just look at his brothers and go, oh, they've changed. And even if he sees his brothers and they say, yeah, we've changed, he's not going to, he's like, well, okay, what do they say? Something walks and something talks, or whatever, The idea is like, let's see.
But what you're bringing up is pointing to the fact that we do have that our king, he judges without sight, and like he doesn't rely on the sight or on the hearing of his ear, right?
Right.
Our king knows the heart. Even Joseph, even the key figure of this story, this magnificent story that we see. And I mean, I don't know anyone who's ever said, I really don't like the Joseph story. Everyone likes this story.
Wow,
it's a great story.
Be strange to hear, yeah.
But I mean, my point simply is this: that even the hero of this magnificent story still does not measure up to our king, who judges by the heart. Keep going.
And so Joseph's doing. He's like, look, the best he can do is to like really stick it to him. How many times does he say, do you have a father? Do you have a brother? Are they still alive? Or are they
and then
alive?
He does that right when he reveals himself. He says, is my father still alive? They've been talking about their dad the whole time. That's one of the things that I didn't understand. Keep going.
He desperately wants information, but he's walking that tightrope of, he doesn't know if he can trust them. What's it? And this gets to just like among believers, what does it take to build trust with another human being? What does it mean? Like, what does it take for you to go, wow, this person's trustworthy? How many times have we had people in our lives that we thought were reliable or trustworthy, and then when it got intense, all of a sudden they're not there, they're gone.
Right.
And you're like, wait a minute. Like, I thought I had a trustworthy like ally here. And then when the chips were down, I went to lean on that and nothing there.
Carpet was pulled out.
So, So we see at the surface, but this is back to the surface, we see Joseph's motive is like, he's testing to see what's in their heart, because he wants to see how they respond. God knows all this, but there's another view. That is another thread, is we, the reader, we see Judah talking to his father in Canaan, and we see Judah's words here before Joseph. Joseph doesn't know what Judah told his dad, but we, the reader, are being presented with Judah in two completely different scenarios. Is he acting in integrity? Is Judah the same person in Canaan under the famine talking to his dad as he is under the pressure of this threatening, intimidating, able to imprison me at a moment's notice authority in Egypt? And what the Torah shows, what Moses shows, is yes, Judah is the same person. We can see Judah's attitude and how he talks to his dad, and then we can see him under a foreign ruler. In his mind, he doesn't know it's Joseph.
Right.
And we see this is integrity. This is a man who has put his life on the line. He's pledged his life. And then in the boots on the ground, in the heart of battle, he is that same man. And that's to me, that's what hits with this opening word. And Judah approached before him. That's Judah going by himself. He's standing apart from the brothers. And then this really amazing, story. And he basically he has no leg to stand on, right? I mean, if you remember, last week's Torah portion ends with Benjamin having the cup, and they tear their clothes. They're tearing their clothes. They're like, we don't have any standing. And so what is he doing? He's appealing to mercy. He's appealing to mercy. And he's not compromising his word to his father. He's uncompromising with his integrity. And I think this is also a picture of the Messiah. Like, we can look at Joseph as a picture of the Messiah. I believe equally we can see Judah as a picture of the Messiah. And indeed, we know that David, of course, comes from the line of Judah. And so I believe there's a reason why God begins the Pentateuch, or the Torah of Moses, with an in-depth look at the patriarchs, the development of their character, and how this basically, the last third of the book of Genesis is really about Joseph and Judah in a strong sense, and that they are both pictures of the Messiah in different aspects of the Messiah.
So I think that I wonder, maybe I'm misreading this, but I wonder, when you're watching a movie and you sit there, you go, what are you doing? You're so no, what, the emotion happens there. I'm wondering if we get a little of this in 46 and 46:33 and following into 47. Joseph says to his brothers, look, when we go down, don't tell Pharaoh that you're shepherds. Okay, because shepherds are an abomination, right? He says in 34, he says, your servants have been, you shall say to him, when he asks what your occupation is, you shall say to him, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers. And then in 47:1, he says, so Joseph went and told Pharaoh, my father and my brothers, with the livestock and herds and all their possessions have come to the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen. And from among his brothers, he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds. What are you doing? He just said, don't say that. I mean, help me out here. What's going on? It doesn't seem like Pharaoh seems to care either. Or does he give them a specific portion of land that's separated? Because he says, look, you keep my livestock, right? So it's almost as if he's like, okay, these guys are kind of idiots. It's like you got the Three Stooges coming in. He just tells them, don't tell them you're shepherds. And the very first thing they say, oh, we're shepherds. Are you reading that the same as I am?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever caught onto that aspect of it. So that's interesting to me.
I'm always looking at the comedy, man.
There's just another aspect of our Torah portion is Jacob's unbelief, right, that Joseph's alive, like this. And in a way, this is like, I think this is also a hint of the resurrection, like the reconciliation of the brothers. They're all weeping, right? Benjamin's weeping on Joseph's neck. Their complete world is taking a complete overhaul, right? Like,
so
they're becoming brand new people. Like, they're in a brand new world. Like, Joseph's alive. We're set. Like, financially, we're good. Like, you know what I mean? We've got a place.
I see this as the sign of Jonah. Now, a lot of people, because Yeshua says, just as Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days and 3 nights, so the Son of Man will be in the earth 3 days and 3 nights. That's not to say that he's going to be in the grave exactly 72 hours. In my opinion, the sign of Jonah is that he is considered dead, fully dead. He's not mostly dead. He's fully dead, right? And then he comes back, and this is the sign of Jonah. We see the same thing with Joseph, at least in Abraham's eyes, in Jacob's eyes, right? In Jacob's eyes, his son is dead. He is dead, killed by a beast. And now 20 years later, boom, or no, even more than that, right? Years and years later, boom, all of a sudden he appears and he's the ruler of Egypt. It's like, this to me is the sign of Jonah.
And they all have new life,
right,
and hope and a future through Joseph's life.
right.
In other words, where they were in Canaan, there was the famine. They could not feed their animals.
Right.
Like they had, like Jacob said, well, take some almonds, or what was it, pistachios and some, take some of their.
Take a charcuterie board.
Yeah, it's like stuff that, food storage that they had, like dried fruit and stuff like this. But that's not stuff they can't feed their animals, that stuff. And they can't live off, you can't just live off like, pistachios and eventually you need more than that. So they sent, Jacob says, take the best of what we have in storage, but like we're in a pickle. We need grain. Animal, we don't have anywhere to shepherd our animals. And so through this type of resurrection of Joseph and his attachment to them, they're in Egypt. They have the best of the land of Egypt. They have plenty of area to graze their animals. And of course, what happens on the Egyptian side, Joseph just starts gobbling up. I mean, all the people of Egypt end up saying, "You're our Lord. Like, we don't have anything. We don't have anything but you." Like, and it reminds me of the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. It's like, give us food. Like, we're your servants. Like, the whole world of Egypt transforms under the obvious dependency on Joseph. And that position of power was not Joseph's own accomplishment. It's not like the story is not, Joseph, he grew up a farmer, but he hated the farm life. So he moved to New York and he said, someday, I'm just going to start parking cars at like Goldman Sachs and work my way up. I'll sweep, I'll clean toilets, sweep the, I'll guard the front desk. And someday I'll be CEO, and someday I'll buy a Ferrari and I'll have a big mansion on the river. Like, and then all of a sudden, fast forward 20 years, and sure enough, look at Joseph, rags to riches. And now he's in a position of glory. That's not the story of Joseph.
Right.
Even if Joseph wanted that, Joseph was crushed again and again and again. And he didn't understand why, but he was righteous when Potiphar's wife was like trying to, adulterously trying to pursue him. He said, I can't sin against God. And he was unjustly imprisoned. He helped people in prison and said, hey, remember me? They forgot about him for that was last year, 2 years went by. Oh, that's right. There's this guy. Like, it wasn't a rags to riches. It was riches to rags in a way. I mean, he was beloved among all his siblings by his father. He was treated specially, and they cast him out, out of hatred. So he had to bear the emotional abandonment and betrayal and hatred of his own family. His own family hated him. Alone in the world, traded as a slave. How many times is he like, Lord, what's this all about? I think the book of Job is a similar story. It's like, I think somehow by God's miracle, he gave Joseph a seed of faith. And Joseph endured these things. He often didn't understand why. It hurt. Right? It's physically. Now, I don't know if he was ever beaten as a slave. The Bible doesn't get into detail. But I don't imagine prison conditions were that great.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and then so he's got the betrayal. And even when he names his kids, now this is, of course, part of the story is he's like the first son, Menashe. This was last week. We talked about this. As God has helped me to forget, like that. That means that if he named his firstborn son something that has to do with forgetting, we know there's got to be pain there of memory, of that sort of thing. And then the second son, Ephraim, is like, God's made me fruitful. And so what is so wonderful about Joseph is his just like he's building on rock in that he is unquestioningly framing good and bad, whatever happens to him, in terms of God's sovereignty, and that his relationship with God is always first. We never see Joseph doubting God or, saying, well, maybe there is no God, or like giving, there's, as difficult as it is for Joseph, he doesn't give in to despair. Although I'm sure he felt abandoned, deeply abandoned, and wondering why the years were rolling by. And now he knows. See, now he can look back and he can, and this reminds me of Romans 5, where Paul says, we boast in the hope of the glory of God, but we also boast in our trials. And what does it mean to boast in a trial? Well, because the trials produce perseverance, and perseverance produces proven character, and proven character produces hope. And that hope does not leave us disappointed, because it reassures. We see that that he's given the Holy Spirit in our hearts with the love of God. We understand God more clearly and more fully through these trials. And that's exactly what's happening for Joseph. He's looking back at all this. He sees now the fulfillment of these dreams, and he's seeing his brothers, and he's saying, God meant this for good. Like he knew that there was going to be a famine, and he sent me here ahead of time to prepare a place, right? Again, this is kind of hints at the Messiah, to prepare a place, to provide life for you. And at the same time, while he's providing life for his own family, others are confessing his lordship, right? The people in Egypt are saying, like, yeah, without you, we're nothing. We're not going to survive. You have, everything is yours. We've given you everything. And you're our source of food. You're our source of life. So anyway, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here.
Last thing I want to say about this passage is I noticed in 47, we have Joseph presents his father to Pharaoh. For all intents and purposes, Pharaoh is the ruler of the known world at that time, right? I mean, he's probably the most powerful person on earth at that time, especially during the famine, right? You have a shepherd come in. Now, granted, we've talked about how rich Jacob was. His whole family, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they seem to have a standing army. They're not just, they're not just shepherds. They are shepherds, but they have a standing army. They have, throughout this line, they have huge amounts of wealth. So it's not just some peon coming in to meet him. But at the same time, what I notice is that Jacob comes in, he blesses Pharaoh twice. And to me, I see this as like
before and after, right? At the beginning and at the end.
But what is interesting to me, it was like if you had, the president of the United States, and now you bring in, I don't know, a diplomat from some lowly, unknown country. It's like
Whoville or something.
Yeah. The ambassador of Kazakhstan wants to come in and bless you. It's like, it seems almost backward. It almost seems backwards. You know what I mean? Like, and yet Pharaoh doesn't seem out of place to Pharaoh. It doesn't seem out of place to anyone. Jacob blesses him twice, at the beginning and at the end. And Pharaoh just receives that. And to me, I think once again, it shows somewhat of the status of who Jacob is at this point in time, that he comes in and he takes it upon himself. He doesn't feel like he's not embarrassed. He doesn't feel.
It's a very humble story. Like it's a hard story. That's his elevator speech for his life.
Yes. Yeah. That's
like, oh man, sucks to be you kind of thing. Like you'd think Pharaoh might go, wow.
But he doesn't.
Like this guy's rugged. Like this guy's lived.
Right.
He's been
Right.
run over by life kind of thing.
It's like Rambo walking in and blessing Pharaoh, right? All right. I think that's going to do it. Unless you have something else. Are we good?
No, I think, but Pharaoh becomes kind of this, just one more on that scene. Pharaoh's kind of this flat character. Like he's
Right. Yeah.
very different. And this is also by God's wisdom, what God wanted to reveal in the Torah is the contrast of the Pharaoh that did not know Joseph, that is king in the book of Exodus, right? Is like a very different heart attitude. Whereas we see a trust in this Pharaoh trusts Joseph, and Joseph's, it's not back to Joseph trusting Judah.
Yeah.
This Pharaoh has trusted Joseph because Joseph was, as far as this Pharaoh's concerned, came out of prison, interpreted help. It basically was a chief counsel to Pharaoh in a way that saved Pharaoh and the land of Egypt, where none of Pharaoh's resources, before reaching out to Joseph, before learning about Joseph, none of his resources were helpful. His best lector priests of Egypt, the magicians, the wise men of Egypt, the religion of Egypt. There were no ancient Egyptian texts that were giving him wisdom. He had no, and it says his heart, he was disturbed. Pharaoh was like, so we had the leader of Egypt disturbed by his predicament of these vivid and kind of like earth-shaking dreams, or his soul-shaking dreams. And he had no recourse, no religion, no counselor, no priest he could go to no even friend. He got wisdom, and this is later, this is last week's Torah portion, who has the Ruach Elohim, and that's that word from Genesis 1:1, the Spirit of God. This Pharaoh, his heart was prepared by God as a kind of good soil, so that when, according to God's unfolding time, like this is why Joseph had to be crushed and crushed again. He was being prepared for this moment. And it's back to the rags to riches. This is not Joseph working his tail off to try to advance himself through the hierarchy of business and wealth and stuff. It's not that at all. It's God crushing Joseph because God has a certain time frame where things are going to happen. Like he's orchestrating this big symphony. And at the moment, Joseph was ready for when Pharaoh had this shaking, troubling dream. The resources of Egypt were unhelpful. They had no aid for Pharaoh.
Right.
And so Pharaoh, from that point on, he's like, wow, Joseph, you steer the ship.
Right.
I trust you. You're trustworthy. And then the fact of the dream coming true then just reaffirms, Pharaoh's heart was reaffirmed towards Joseph. Once they had the 7 years of plenty, when the famine hit, he's like, wow, this really was the right move, trusting this guy.
Right.
And so Pharaoh becomes kind of this background person,
character,
and Joseph is the one who's shining, who has the power. So anyway, great stuff in these Torah portions here.
We hope that you've enjoyed it, and we hope that this has sparked things that you can jump off from here into this Torah portion and into the other passages that are connected to it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel, TorahResource. It is we got stuff coming out and more and more stuff coming out all the time. We have a couple of series that are going to be coming out as well. So subscribe, and we will see you next week.